videos coming in this is the footage, the first footage of the Russian troops now entering Kherson. That's the latest information that we have gathered along with the visuals from this morning as far as the Russian forces entering the city of Kherson is concerned. This information has been gathered and sent across by the mayor of this particular area. The Russian army on Tuesday reached the southern Ukrainian city of Kherson near the Moscow-controlled Crimea and is setting up checkpoints on its outskirts. The city's mayor has now stated this. Meanwhile, the Russian, army is also setting up checkpoints and entrances near Kherson. And Kherson has been and will stay with Ukraine, and the mayor stated. But we can see several of these videos coming in of how Russian troops have been trying to encircle the entire region as far as the country of Ukraine is concerned. We have also seen several of these visuals coming in on day 6 of the Russian offensive in Ukraine, where airstrikes continue in Kyiv and Kharkiv as well. My colleague Suesha is also joining us on this broadcast. Yes, Suesha, we have the first footage of the Russian troops now entering Kherson.
Absolutely, Richa, and let's understand that today on day six, I beg your pardon, the situation that is worsening on the ground as we see how Russia is really intensifying the shelling, and many of these war zones that are severely hit. Of course, just a while ago, we also showed our viewers that 40-mile convoy of Russian tanks and other vehicles threatened Ukraine's capital, and now these are the latest pictures of the Russian troops entering Kherson. So really, when we see the satellite images and the aerial pictures that give us a sense of how the deployment is spreading on the ground, Russia putting further pressure by using this method, and it is only getting grave because we also see a kind of ammunition that is being used by Russia at this point, military installations that have been targeted by Russia, intense shelling, and vacuum bombs that are being used against civilians on the ground. Richa.
Absolutely. Let me also now go across to our senior executive editor Abhishek Kapoor joining us on this broadcast. And Abhishek, we have the first images of the Russian troops entering Kherson. And Kherson has a population of around over 280,000 people lying north of Crimea Peninsula. Help us understand the significance of this region as well.
Well, the significance is that the Russian strategy is evolving, and we can see it in two ways. One, we are increasingly seeing cities being taken over by troops on the ground, by boots on the ground, and strategic locations around those cities being captured. We have seen how from the beginning, when the action was focused towards the east, it has panned towards the west. And now, in the case of Kherson, there is a thrust from the south as well. So we have seen the Russian troops coming in from the north via the Belarus route. We have seen the troops supporting the separatists in the Donetsk and the Luhansk region in the east and coming in from that side, taking over Kharkiv. And then we have seen this thrust from the south, from the Crimea Peninsula. So essentially what we are seeing is, so far as the eastern part of Ukraine is concerned, that is east of Dnieper River, the West still remains predominantly in the control of the present government in Kyiv. But towards the east, I think by a slow creep, the Russians are getting in control of almost half the country of Ukraine. So that's an evolving strategy, as we can see. Earlier, for example, most of the raids were happening during the daytime, and one thought that while the Americans typically do it at night, the Russians for some reason are choosing it during the daytime. But then now, even for the air raids, we are seeing even that strategy is evolving, and more raids are happening towards the night, and in the daytime, capture of the ground is taking place. So that evolution of Russian military tactic has happened. Maybe they are a little more confident that so far as their military or larger military objective is concerned, the portion towards the east of Dnieper River, which has predominantly Russian ethnic population, I think they just want to clear it and capture it now, and that's why those boots on the ground. So that strategy being visible in the pictures that are coming in. Also, the scale of destruction is also emerging now. So that's another aspect of this entire exercise. Remember, something has happened which made the Ukrainian side come to the table and negotiate with the Russians at the place of their choosing in Belarus instead of the western or the west of Ukraine nations that they had earlier demanded, which clearly shows that the government in Kyiv is realizing they are getting hemmed in, they are getting encircled, they are getting surrounded, and they have lesser leverage. So better negotiate and get something out before Russians control all the vantage and Russians control the narrative. So in the sense that they control everything on the ground, all the levers on the ground. So that bit has happened over the last 2 days. We don't know how it pans out from here, but in all likelihood, given the exodus that is taking place from Kyiv as well, Richa, I think it's only a matter of time before something has to be thrashed out so far as the Kyiv government is concerned with the Russians. Otherwise, of course, the military offensive is intensifying. Increasingly, we are seeing Russians are getting control of territory on the ground as well, with these boots on the ground that we can see in the pictures. And of course, as has been reported by our teams there in the Ukrainian capital, as also along the borders of Ukraine towards the east, it's a clear case of increasingly Russians getting a control by creep. Joining us, Colonel S. Dini, defense expert, live from Kherson. Colonel Dini, you know, we have been speaking on and on from the time of our Ladakh standoff to other crises with military component around the world. What's your sense now? Are the Russians in greater control of what's happening? They are getting boots on the ground now, which shows that perhaps they really want to capture some territory and use it as a bargaining chip in the negotiations that are ongoing?
Yes, to an extent what you're saying is, is right, that the Russians, what control which they had about 3 days back, more than that, now they seem to have steadily gaining ground and through boots on ground. Actually, we can see that happening on ground, but still it is early days. And after the talk yesterday, now what I feel is that, Russian President Vladimir Putin, he will go, all out to have a decisive kind of, to show something of decisive in nature so that he can tell his troops and his own countrymen that, this is what we were trying to do for the last 10 days. Because now today is 6th day. In the next 72 to 72 hours, if nothing, if the same the state of stalemate continues, I think then Russia will find it very difficult to continue the operations further on. So I think what is going to happen is after the civilians have been evacuated or they themselves have gone on their own, you will find a lot of targets at the civilian, the civilian buildings, which we already can see. I think Kharkiv was one example today wherein there was a massive missile strike in one of the buildings there. So these kind of things is going to increase. And also, we saw in the morning there's about a 64-kilometer long convoy towards Kyiv. So those kind of movements inside Kyiv, into Kyiv also we will see. And as per all expectations, till now, Russia has just employed about 75% of what its combat potential which it wanted for this particular conflict. It is employed till now. So I think the might of the entire Russian army you will see in the coming 48 to 72 hours.
Colonel Dini, I need one comment of yours on an observation I thought I made, which is that the Russian Air Force, we are really not seeing the actual might of the Russian Air Force. We are not seeing the kind of shock and awe, for example, the Americans use when they get into some territory. Number one. Number two, a bit of predictive analysis from your side. Are we looking at the possibility of an insurgency panning out in Ukraine, given the fact that now Russians have boots on the ground, but then they don't have an absolute domination of the territory? So first, I want your response on why the Russian Air Force is missing in the manner that they could shock and awe, and two, whether this is going to turn into an insurgency.
For the first question to be answered, I think it is part of a plan. I mean, Russian plan of calibration. If they had gone all out with the Air Force in the first few days itself, I think the casualties would have been huge it would have been very difficult for even Vladimir Putin to justify what he's trying to do, because we all know that how once you employ Air Force, what is the kind of destruction which it can create. So I think it was a calibrated move. Rightly, you mentioned that air superiority with Russia, we all know. But that kind of thing they did not deliberately use. Even for that matter, even missile usage was limited. That's why you see yesterday, there were only, day before yesterday, at least the civilian casualties was very less. About 380 was day before yesterday, the official version of Ukraine. And also, but surprisingly,
Right.
there has been no contest also. The air has been totally with the control of Russia, which shows by the fact that there's a 64-kilometer convoy which is absolutely, moving as if in peacetime. So coming to your second question, is that that particular part of whether an insurgency can happen, even if Russia is able to, conventionally win here, is a huge possibility. There is a possibility. There is no doubt.
Right.
This is an ideal situation because there is a lot of nationalism,
Colonel Dini.
a lot of support from outside.
Colonel Dini,
Yeah.
I have some fresh visuals coming in from Colonel Dini. Just hold on to your thoughts. We have some fresh visuals coming in from the ground of Russian forces moving in, and a building has been bombarded, and the civilian population there is trying to douse the fires. In fact, if you look at it, it seems a fresh bombardment because there is still smoke coming out of the debris. And also joining us, Group Captain Augustine Vinod, as we continue to bring to you latest of the happenings from the war zone, viewers. And in this instance, a building that has faced aerial bombardment either through a missile or an aircraft bombing. You can still see smoldering remains of it as civilians move in and the disaster response moves in, perhaps looking for whether there were some people inside. We don't know. This seems like more like a commercial space with a crane removing the debris. And we have seen similar pictures coming in from across Ukraine, wherever the Russians have chosen their targets. They are claiming that most of them are military targets. In this case, it seems a commercial building. We don't know as yet whether there was some population inside, there's some people inside. But then this seems a case of fresh bombing and happening during the daytime. If we have to move on to that 1 minute report, we can do that and then come back to the discussion with Colonel S. Dini and Group Captain Augustine Vinod. Stay back with us, viewers.